Katoa, tēnā koutou i ngā rangatira, i ngā kaunahera o tēnei komiti. Kua tai mai ki tēnei hui. Ka nui te mihi manahau ki a koutou katoa. Ko te tuamanako ia, ka tutu ki pai i a tātou, nā mahi kei mua i a tātou. Nō reira, i runga i te nākau whakaaiti, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Charlie, could you commence with a karakia, please?
Kia ora. Me karakia tātou. I hono rei karori ki te atua, he maungarung ki te whenua, he prekaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Hanga te atua he nākau hau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou, a pakatongi a tō wairua tapu, hei āwhina, hei tohu i a mātou, he te aki hoki a mātou mahi katoa i tēnei rā. Ka whakaro āroha, ki e rātou, ki mātou kraua kuia, ki e rātou e noho pane ana, e noho mauiwi ana. Ki a piki te kā, ki a piki te ora kei roto i a rātou, o te rei i rungi a tātou katoa, ko koe ana hoki tō tātou kaupaka ora āmene.
Āmene.
Kia ora, Martin.
Kia ora. Well, good morning and welcome everyone to this hybrid Delta Level 2 meeting of a version of the meeting of the Regional Transport Committee. I'm not entirely sure, I can't see exactly who's here, so I apologise if I overlook anyone, and do signal, put your hand up if you're wanting to speak. We'll do our best to manage the situation, and also equally feel free to pipe up if you think I've missed you and you're wanting to speak to a matter on the agenda. Firstly, can I just ask, are there any notices, also are there any apologies that we need to record?
We have a few, Mr Chair.
If you could please read those out.
Mayor Sandra Hazelhurst and Matt Broderick from the police, and Alex Walker from Mayor Alex Walker. I'll explain.
Would someone be willing to move that those apologies be accepted? Councillor Price.
Yep.
And Councillor Lambert. All in favour? We'll say aye. Anyone against? No one against. When I say aye, that means put your hand or thumb up or down if you're not here. If you're only here virtually. Not only, if you are here virtually. All right. Are there any notices? Don't appear to be. That's good. Any conflict of interest declarations? All right. Okay. Can we please ask you to have in front of you the minutes of the Regional Transport Committee meeting on 14 May. Is someone happy to move that they're a true and correct record of the meeting? Councillor Kerr, thank you. Someone second that? I will. Oh, Councillor Price. Well, Councillor Price has seconded that. All in favour will say aye or put their thumb up.
Aye.
Anyone against? No, that seems to be unanimous. Any matters arising that are, that aren't on the agenda that anyone wishes to raise? Right, everyone's been quiet and well behaved. That's good to hear. Good to see. So, all right, well then we can just bear with me. I need to get back to the agenda now. Go away minutes. Right. There we go. That's going to make it easier for me. Okay, page 3 of this week's agenda, follow-ups. Peter, I imagine we can take these as read, or...
They're all on the agenda anyway, aren't they?
Do we need to... We don't need to move that these be. We're just noting these, aren't we? Mm. Yeah, all right. Look, are there any aspects of the follow-ups that the Transport Manager, we've got Mary Ann here today as Acting Transport Manager, wishes to discuss? Or any of the committee members wish to discuss beyond what's evident on the face? There's one embarrassing one there that I don't think we've taken up that any further with the Ministry of Education, have we?
We haven't directly, but I did speak to the Transport SIG, and via the convener of that SIG group, had a little bit of a conversation with Ministry of Transport, who have not got this conversation on their agenda. It's not of sufficient interest to them at the moment. And the message was that they expected that the Ministry of Education would liaise locally if there were any changes to bus services, and there'd be a conversation at the local level, but didn't seem to be any interest at the national level to consider policies around bus services.
Right, so the Ministry's expectation was that the Ministry of Education, that's the Ministry of Transport, expectation would be that the Ministry of Education locally would liaise with us on any changes to service.
Yeah.
Do we need to write a letter to the Ministry of Education locally or an email and record that understanding, or?
Well, we already do, and particularly Megan is in contact with the local office.
Okay,
Yeah,
we've got that bridge across
yeah.
Ahuriri at least.
Don't know how effective it is.
Katrina, did you want to share something?
I might just add that the Ministry of Education is making some changes to school bus routes, it's my understanding, so that they are not doing a loop or will stop doing loops that go past other schools that are not on the bus routes, essentially narrowing down the service a bit more so that students are going to the school that they should be going to, essentially. Our new transport manager coming on board next month is aware of this already and I've already started to have some conversations with her about that with our own passenger transport service, particularly in Hastings, and particularly with on-demand coming, and how we might expand our own routes for that in the morning. And
Right.
So there's some work, essentially, is what I'm saying, that we need to do.
All right, well, perhaps if the minutes could just record that we've just...
Mr. Chair, sorry, Tanya's going to...
Oh, Tanya, thank you for pointing that out, Peter.
Morena, everyone. Martin, I don't think there's any harm in you as chair of the Regional Transport Committee actually writing to the local ministry. Just keep building that relationship, let them know what we are doing and what our concerns are. I appreciate there may be management links, but I think from a governance point of view, it'd be a really good idea.
Happy to do that. If I could perhaps be supported in that correspondence, but that's a good way to round that out. So if we just say is there any other discussion on that item? Councillor Taylor. Good.
Yeah, good morning. I think I stand to be corrected, but I think part of this issue got raised because we were having problems in CHB with a rural road being taken out of the Ministry of Education's rounds, a road that we deemed to be safe or nothing wrong with it for a school bus. So I think if that could be remembered in the process as well, please.
Sure. All right, well, just minutes perhaps record that we've discussed the matter, that there are channels of communication at management level between the ministry and this council as encouraged by the Ministry of Transport, but that will be cemented through a letter from the chair to the local Ministry of Education. All right, any other discussion on follow-up items? No, I think we just move on, can't we?
Well, we need to...
Moves that the...
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just move that the follow-ups be received. Councillor Lambert, Councillor Taylor, all in favour, thumbs up.
Right.
Up aye. All right, anyone against? Just make sure, no, it's, you can safely record that it's carried. Okay, call for minor items not on the agenda. All right, we won't mention oranges on State Highway 5 then. We'll go straight on to the very important business of the Road Safe Annual Plan.
Martin, may I just interrupt slightly? I went through the Napier Topol Road and it was apples.
It was apples.
Quite clearly, it was apples.
It was definitely apples, was it? Not oranges? Okay, well, it's hard to compare apples with oranges, I must say. I don't know how you could possibly make the mistake. Well, perhaps we're all going bananas. Can we, poor joke, can we ask the author of this report, which I imagine is
Okay.
Marianne or Katrina is going to speak to that?
Possibly me, and have to acknowledge Liz's work on this, and she wasn't able to be here to help speak to it, but in the absence of our road safe team leader, Liz and I put together this plan. I don't know that there's an awful lot to add to what we've written. Our delivery of the Road Safe Expo is currently being evaluated. We had to get outside help with that just because of staffing resources, and we don't have the report to hand yet, but hope to have that. And as soon as we receive it, we'll circulate it to the committee. So despite being short-handed, the regional program from last year was pretty well delivered as planned at the beginning of the year. So the team was busy in that year, and we have now looking ahead for the next program. An update on the driver licence program. We were expecting the funding for that to be reduced substantially, but actually we ended up getting a $90,000 per year allocation for that program to continue, which is good news. And we've suggested how we might distribute the funding subject to contracts with the providers for the coming year. We're also suggesting that since it is now a specific part of the Road Safe program, that we perhaps don't need the driver licensing governance group to oversee this program, and that it can be overseen adequately by this committee. So a suggestion is that we disestablish that governance group, and we report to this committee on progress with that program. The action plan has been put together by Liz, and in the attachments for the report here, 5 attachments describing what we're doing in the 4 council areas with a regional restraint program as well. We had a look at performance measures and struggled a little bit to find performance measures that linked directly to the Road Safe program in relation to the deaths and serious injuries, because we are promoting a much closer link with the Road Safe education program to the other components that help meet the Road to Zero outcomes, which include the infrastructure work as well as the education programs, and looking at a closer relationship, I guess, between how those infrastructure programs are delivered alongside the Road Safe education program, in addition to work with the local safer community groups where appropriate, or focus groups that Linda is starting to work with locally in Wairoa and Central Hawke's Bay in particular. So happy to answer any questions best I can in Liz's absence.
All right, I'll take questions in a moment. Firstly, welcome Mayor Hazelhurst, Mayor Sandra. Nice to have you with us. Now, I'm going to ask a couple of questions myself. I'll just make sure that I understand things, and then I'll open it up to the floor. Firstly, on the driver's license program. Yeah, I'll do it in a sequence. Driver's license program. So the $90,000 funding, is that sufficient to cover 50% of next year's driver's license program, or 100%?
100. We had essentially 2 years program squashed into 1 year in the last financial year.
Yes, I remember all of that.
So yes, now the 90 is the annual program that the service providers wanted to deliver. So it's 100% of what they proposed.
All right, that they proposed. Yes, right, because we did a sort of a 1 year plus a signal for the second year. So this will fund what we already signalled would be funded this year.
Yeah.
Well, right,
Yeah.
without contribution from
Without
controlling
contribution
authorities
from the two iwi groups that were
here. Right.
part of it last time, yeah.
And have those groups been, I think the answer to that is yes, consulted in the preparation of the road safety program element relating to the driver's licence scheme?
I would have to confer with Liz, but I'm not sure that we directly consulted with them.
Right, but they were consulted, in the request for that funding and in the applicants, I think. All right. As I recall it, in terms of that road safety program, we approved this year's one in March of this year, so we sort of almost retrospectively approved it somewhat.
You approved the broad framework for the road safe program, the
March
next
meeting.
3 years at the March meeting.
Okay, so that was the 3-year program.
Funding application, yeah.
That was the 3-year program, all right.
And this is the detail of the yearly program.
Understand. I think that was me. I did have one minor question to do with the way that the different actions had been applied, but it may not be that you can answer that. For example, there seems to be a slightly different approach or range of activities for Napier and Hastings with a greater emphasis on cycling than there is for Wairoa, for example. Perhaps a little discussion on the theory behind the different activities that have been set for Wairoa as opposed to, say, Napier and Hastings. Presumably that's sort of tailored to the circumstances of those communities.
It was, and this is in Liz's absence. There is a community at risk register, and that looks at what kind of incidents and crashes there have been in the local areas. So Liz has constructed that work plan to reflect the high risk areas in the various in various districts.
Right. And cycling's obviously a risk for Hastings and Napier more so than Wairoa. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the members of the committee? Councillor Kerr.
Just firstly, asking after Linda's health.
She's doing okay. We're in regular contact.
Can you just pass that on that we were asking after her and wishing her well, please?
Thank you, will do.
I have a question with regard to the agenda and driver's licensing. When we started this funding program, we had a series of providers. So who's fallen off or who's now missing in action?
Excuse me, they're all the same. We aren't missing any of the providers from last year or the year before.
Okay, so there was a woman in Flaxmere that was working with the Pacifica community that had language issues.
Yes.
So that may have been 3 to 5 years ago. And I also understood Mangahururu Tangatu had some funding at one stage. So they too must have.
Well, actually, in relation to the Pacifica training, Ave went through the driver training program just this last year. So she's now a driver trainer. And you'll note that we've suggested keeping some $10,000 aside, and what we think might be helpful is to find ways to support those driver trainers who are targeting specific at-risk parts of the community, including Ave, so to now support her in the work that she can do with the Pacifica community. I'm not sure about the Mangahururu Tangatu. I would have to defer to Liz if we've got anything there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm delighted that Ave will be able to, if needed, access funds for targeted training. Thank you. I'm really pleased with that, Marianne.
Cool.
But Mayor Hazelhurst is.
Mayor Hazelhurst. Yes, Andrew. I think you're on mute.
You're on mute.
You're on mute,
Sandra.
I think, Sandra.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Morning, everyone. Just following up from Councillor Kerr, I just wondered if we had any providers in Flaxmere at the moment accessing this funding.
No, not directly.
Okay.
Apart from keeping that $10,000 aside to look at resourcing for Ave. Nothing
Okay.
else. Yeah.
I might, could I connect you up with our social development team to see if they could, find the right people and to support the program?
That would be great. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we had a terrific, a very, very sad situation there with 14-year-olds the other day, and the big focus for us for Flaxmere and wellbeing and making sure people have access to learning and training and wellbeing. So I'll link up our team. Thank you.
Great. Sounds good.
All right, other questions? Councillor Van Dyk. Good morning. Marina.
You're on mute.
Mute.
You're on mute, Gareth.
Sorry, good morning, everyone. I'm just sitting in on behalf of Graham Taylor, who's the chair of the Regional Cycle Governance Group. And of course, on that note, you can imagine what kind of question I would be coming up with. First, I've got two questions. Is a road specifically in an open area, or does it mean in town as well? Because I see very much a focus on open roads. It's all based on cars. And if I look at number 56, which is climate change consideration, if we look at the regional transport strategy, where we're talking about 60% of all education targeted transport should be active transport or public transport, and any other transport should be up to 30%. So I think this strategy, to me, doesn't look far enough ahead, because I don't see any safety when it comes to active transport in this. It's all car related. If we have to meet these targets of 60 and 30%, I believe we cannot do it safely with the infrastructure we've got right now. And most of you have heard me speak about this. And I seriously doubt that what we're actually trying to achieve with the 60 and 30% in regards to climate change consideration, health and livable cities and livable areas, that we're actually not meeting these targets. Because once we actually start pushing people into the active transport, we'll actually have other safety issues to consider that actually not actually covered in this plan. So I think it's not future focused. But I haven't really been part of this corridor with all of you. But just reading through that, I think we're missing something very seriously. Thank you.
Can I respond to that a little bit? Yeah, I'm just trying to, I guess, consider the place of this road safety action plan alongside the regional transport plan, which has very much got those targets and that future focus that you're talking about there, Jareth, in terms of investing in cycling infrastructure and safe cycling infrastructure, segregated, cycle roads and pathways. I'll be interested for officer comments on the place of the road safety plan. Is it an adjunct to infrastructure safety measures, or is this more addressed at behaviour? And in other words, it's an adjunct to the more infrastructural dimension of the land transport plan. Now, as part of that, I do note, Jareth, that on page 27, and this is a point I made earlier, that the Hastings and Napier road safety action activity lists include cyclist education, be safe, be seen. For example, I guess what they don't include is driver education. So anyway, some thoughts from me on that very relevant question. Some responses, please, from staff.
Well, I think what we're starting to see is a much more integrated look at how we manage the infrastructure alongside the softer education messaging work. And this is, I think, the beginning of a closer relationship between infrastructure management and the messaging that goes with it. And one example is, I guess, the work in Central Hawke's Bay around intersections and the work at an officer level looking at the messaging that sits alongside the infrastructure work as well as the messaging to the community. As far as driver education goes, the program does include a number of driver education initiatives, particularly in schools, and the rider program, which is, I think, new for the Road Safe program to support, has been working in schools with the young drivers. So those are opportunities for driver education to particularly young folk. But the driver licence program as well that we're funding, the team wants to make sure that as drivers get their licences and they know how to drive a car, they know how to drive it safely and understand responsibilities around being safe and responsible drivers. So all of those messages are coming at various parts of the program. So we're looking at an integrated, more holistic way of managing road safety. I'm not sure that we've got it entirely right, but I think we're working towards something that looks a lot better and more integrated.
Right, I don't know if that answers your question, Derek. You got a follow-up?
Just follow up. So I understand that we as Ministry of Transport and Whakakotahi have chosen for the Road to Zero rather than Vision Zero, which is a European program. And if you look at the Vision to Zero, and I've been thinking about, I've got a clip that actually really explains the Vision Zero principles, and I thought to add it to the items not on the agenda, and it would have been within the 5 minutes. But I thought, being the first time that I'm here at your committee, I thought that would be a little bit too advantageous or too advanced for the time. But just coming back to what we're talking about here, driver behaviour is the issue really, and that's not just from a cycling perspective. It's also from a car perspective, and the Vision Zero separates that, because you cannot. Behaviour of people is very difficult to change, but you can do that through invisible infrastructure and so forth. So that's all I would like to say about it. Otherwise, you can talk about this for a long, long time.
Well, would it be possible to amend the activities list to talk about cyclist and driver education? Do we have to approve this list precisely in the words that are in front of us today, or can we, as a committee, request some changes be made to it?
I think so. I think direction about what you want the program to deliver is suitable.
When does it have to be approved?
Well, it would be useful today because it's setting up the program for the team.
Could we approve it subject to more express reference to driver education around cyclist safety? Right?
Sorry, excuse me, Chair. Could I just make a suggestion, please? Sure. Could we change it to road users, which encompasses whether it's pedestrians, cyclists, all types? Yes,
well, I'm happy to do that, but I don't want to lose the express reference to cycling, because I think we have, so it's road user education, particularly regarding cyclist safety, is the issue. I have a friend who has been in hospital every 2 years for the past decade and has probably broken 40 bones in his body, including most of his head, cycling to work every day and back by drivers who are pulling out in front of him, pulling into intersections, just not seeing him despite having lights and visibility vests. How the man is not dead, I don't know. He is a miracle. He's a walking miracle. I might invite him to one of our committee meetings, but this point totally resonates with me. So if we could have the wording amended perhaps to driver or road user education in relation to cyclist safety, I think that would be important. All right. Okay, there's one other thing that's slightly troubling me about this, to do with the recommendation on, okay, I'll come back to that. On the road safety program, any more questions on the road safety program itself?
Through you, Chair, I just have one point for clarification, re a comment by Jerf. Waka Kotahi Ministry of Transport in New Zealand have adopted Vision Zero. The road to zero is the strategy and pathway to achieving that. I'm happy to provide, we've got some great resources, videos and tools that can just help explain how they're interlinked, that may be really useful to just provide a little bit more detail to members and to councils about what that pathway to achieving Vision Zero actually contains. So they're not separate, and Vision Zero is the direction that we're going.
Thank you, that would be most helpful. All right. Yes, it could be on the next, or it could be uploaded to our Stella site for this committee, or both. All right, well, if there's no more discussion on the road safety, I just want to come back to the driver's licence program.
Oh, Tony.
Councillor Kerr, road safety program?
Driver's licence program, and Kate's also got a hand up.
All right, well, I'll come to you in a minute. I just want to ask this question though regarding the driver's licence program, because we're being asked to sign off on the idea that the governance group be disestablished and that the driver's licence program be, I guess, implemented through the road safety plan that we've got in front of us. I'm not 100% convinced that we're compliant or complete on the issue of tangata whenua consultation. We did meet with Ngāti Kahungunu at the end of last year and early this year in terms of their aspiration that that program reach into the types of communities that Mayor Sandra and Councillor Kerr shared with us before. And we've got enough funding to confirm, I guess, the indications we've given to our existing providers. Are we missing a step whereby we ensure that the program is complete following consultation again with Ngāti Kahungunu, for example, and if necessary bring some additional funding through our entities and Ngāti Kahungunu into that?
I think consultation with the iwi entities is a good idea before we sign any contracts with the service providers.
All right, okay.
And I think what the iwi entities were looking for was, in relation to their contributions at least, targeting where the needs were greatest. That's right. Yeah. And we have identified some improvements we can make to the contracts, so that they're the outcomes focused, and that we're looking to more direct what it is we want them to deliver.
All right, now that's good. So that's at that level, in other words, not as to who the providers are, but what their KPIs are in terms of reach. Right, that was me. Now, so who wants to go first? We had, I think, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Kerr on this, didn't we? Or was it Councillor Taylor?
Okay. If I may go before you, Councillor Kerr, my question relates to what was just mentioned. Part of the driver licence and governance group feedback to Marianne and the team was that we wanted some results back from the programs, which we see in here. I just wonder, is there, if there is no longer going to be the governance group, that there be more reporting back on the evidence of progress being made within these programs, in terms of page 11 has some, what I would think is surprisingly low pass rates in some of the areas.
Yes, and they are. And I'd mentioned this to Liz as well, and her response was that the service providers are working with challenging people that have fallen through the system's gaps and are always going to struggle with sitting theory tests and going through driver licensing programs. So it is something that we will revisit with them, because like you, I did notice that the pass rates did look kind of low, and what kind of follow-up programs can we look at to support those people that haven't passed. So that would be the intention in our recontracting, is that we look at the program and whether or not we can hold those service providers slightly more accountable in relation to pass rates, or what other support those people would need in order to pass. Oh, and the reporting back to the RTC is, I think, a given that we do need to just keep this information more in front of you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think that's important that we get. It's not important to worry about whether they're passing or failing, but the why, and to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks again if they fail.
All right, Councillor Taylor, on that score, perhaps we looked at recommendation 6. It's quarterly reporting on the delivery of the road safe work plan, an evaluation of at least 4 activity areas. Could we add an express reference to evaluation of delivery of the driver's licence program? Make sure that that's expressly, including evaluation of the driver's licence program, all right? Just to make sure that it includes that, so we've got that line of sight, as you say, since we're not a group that's getting together. Now, Councillor Kerr, did you want to speak to this too?
I would have said what Kate said, but I wanted to add one further, and that was around targets. So in our contracts and our discussions and our reporting back, I want to know what our $90,000 is buying.
You mean Waka Kotahi's $90,000?
Well, it's even more important.
No, that's fair enough.
Well, I'm not sure that we could craft a target that was in relation to the number of people passing the driver licence step that they're at, given the challenges of who they're working with. I'm not quite sure what kind of target you'd be looking for if it wasn't there.
Well, aren't the contracts themselves the key to this, in terms of what it's reach?
Yes.
Who,
yeah.
How, and I guess performance. Who, how, and results. So maybe Councillor Kerr wants to have a look at, one of the contracts to satisfy her in that regard, but those seem to me to be the essential elements. It's the community, the method, and the results. But and maybe that could be the focus of the evaluation, that we have an understanding of the communities reached, the methods applied, and the degree of success. Right? Yep. Okay. How are we doing on this item of the agenda? We've got any kind of integrated questions and comments and discussion, but that's all fine. Linda?
Just in response to Councillor Kerr's question, it's a really important one, and I know that it's one that is getting grappled with right across the country, but we could take that as an action to just link in with our driver licensing team and just perhaps understand what others are doing across the country and seeing if there's anything that might be useful there to take into account when it comes to measures or targets.
All right. Okay, I don't see any other hands up, so if we could perhaps move, I'd like to move recommendations 1 to 6, with 6.2 amended to say, including evaluation of the driver's licence program with reference to which communities, methods and outcomes were involved and achieved. I'd also like to ensure that the minutes record at least that in the delivery of that program, staff will consult with Ngāti Kahungunu to ensure that the performance contracts are in line with their expectations. So I don't think that needs to be part of the recommendation. If they could just ensure that that's minuted. Would someone second that motion, please, if they wish to? Councillor Kerr. All right. Any discussion that we haven't already had? Okay, all those in favour, please put your thumbs up. And anyone against, thumbs down, hollow no, something? Carried. Thank you very much. The next decision item is the related topic of the Section 17A review, which I imagine, Katrina, you would speak to? Or?
I am. So I will take the report as read. Sorry, I'm just flicking to that report as quickly as I can. So this has come about as a result of questions that were raised last year by the Regional Transport Committee and advice that you were seeking in terms of the road safety governance and the request for oversight and governance of the road safety program. We did have a workshop, and so while we had some outcomes of that workshop in terms of the direction setting, we agreed the direction setting, oversight and accountability for the road program should sit with the RTC at the governance level. But in terms of the effectiveness and efficiency of that delivery, we haven't answered, and so this is the intent of this review.
Right.
Happy to answer any questions. It's and I should add, at the same time as we proposed or talked about doing a Section 17A review at HBRC, we're also doing a structural change to the transport team, and so this sort of follows on from that as well.
All right. Well, I'll hand over for questions in a moment, but I've got one first, if I could just pose it. The outcome of the 12 March meeting was that oversight of the program sit at governance level. The Section 17A review could presumably assist us in locking in that direction. And I'm just wondering if, to that end, we don't need to be clearer in that regard with the scope of the review.
Yes.
At 13.1, you know, is it adding something like the most effective relationship between governance and implementation of road safety.
Yes.
So they would give us advice about how we best do that.
Yes.
So the most effective relationship between governance and implementation of road safety.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I completely support that comment.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Well,
Good.
sounds like there is tacit, at least, support for the proposition of a review, I guess, as the next step from the workshop and the resolution that followed that workshop. I'm suggesting that we add to the options assessment, the review, look at that most effective relationship between governance and implementation of the road safety program. In other words, the interface between, you know, on the ground, management and governance. Where do we best add value and ensure that it's working to its intent? All right, so the recommendation, someone would be prepared to move the recommendations at 1 to 3. Thank you, Mayor Sandra and Councillor Kerr, and that is with the change to the scope of the review that we've discussed. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? That's carried unanimous by the sound of it. All right, so some information performance items, page 41. We have the transport managers, we've got the public transport report first on page 41. So who's going to speak to that?
Oh, we're both looking at each other saying, not I. Sorry. My apologies. So obviously a challenging time going through COVID levels, so passenger numbers are of course well down. Working with the ministry thankfully on that. We initially dropped the bus service down to a Sunday operation when we were at level 4. What became immediately apparent during that time is that our Sunday service doesn't cater for essential workers going to particularly the DHB. So that was a bit of a lesson for us that we need to consider that more fully next time. We are still in a scenario of mandatory face coverings and limitations on standing. So it's not really creating capacity issues except for, in fact, the school route early in the morning where we've had capacity issues and had to have a second bus following. The on-demand passenger transport trial project is well underway. We've got a project team standing up internally. We also have a Hastings District Council officer on that project team, busy working through the contracts of our providers in that regard in terms of VIA and GoBus. I think that's it. In terms of the total mobility scheme, we have been undertaking considerable reviews of that scheme in terms of contracts and getting that up to speed. We are engaging with the regional council sector who across the country operate the system RideWise. It's not a taxi chip system, it is an electronic system, much like the card. We opted, the regional council, HBRC, and this, we opted not to join that for whatever reason before my time. RideWise 2 is now being trialled in Waikato with Waikato Regional Council, and on the successful trial, Hawke's Bay Regional Council are committing to joining RideWise and changing to finally an electronic system for total mobility. That's the headline.
I'll hand over for questions in a minute. It does look like it's probably not a trend, but there does seem to be a slight bounce back in that the patronage rates are higher for the current year than they were last year. And in fact, I think some of that must have been despite COVID. So
yes,
it's look, I think there's a real actually there is a real latent appetite for alternative transport modes. I know we've got Mr. Wellwood sitting in the room here today. We've got the cycling community absolutely keen as mustard to take to the streets. And I think we've got an absolutely untapped demand if we can get the service provision right through on-demand public transport. So the timing is all there, and we've got very good funding support, which Linda will talk about later, so that's great. So thank you. Any questions on the public transport update? Oh, all right. Now, do we just move that this report be received? Let's have a look.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is, yeah. Could someone move the recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Someone second it? We have Councillor Lambert. Thank you very much. All in favour?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Right,
I did
some
have
discussion.
a question. My hand was up for a question
I
rather
thought you were
than moving.
moving the recommendation. Sorry.
I must make a plug regarding the on-demand public transport trial and the ability for the regional sports park to be included. There's 500,000 people go there each year, and with the poll coming on, the potential is we'll have 1 million people accessing that site.
Thank you, Councillor
To
Kerr.
me, it seems very logical to include that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We spoke. Thank you for raising that. We spoke. We met twice. Well, I've met twice with Graham Avery and David, the manager out there. And what we've actually identified is that they're a special case. And in fact, minibuses aren't going to work for them because of the levels of visitors you're talking about. So we've asked them to consider on a low-hanging fruit basis where we could add most value through a targeted public transport service bespoke to the sports park. And we actually, through talking about it, decided that the on-demand vehicle for the general public is probably not going to be the best service, as opposed to getting some partners outside our current funding structures within the private sector, so that we've got a full-scale bus rather than a minibus going to the right parts on a kind of park and ride basis within the communities that need to get to, say, sports games on Saturday mornings. And of course they kick off at 2 times. They start at 8:10 in the morning, and then they start at 9:40, whatever it is. And so there's really...
Excuse me, Mr Chair, with all due respect, Graham Avery chairs the Community Fitness Centre Trust, which is the swimming pool complex. I chair the Regional Sports Park, which is everything else in there, and I think it would be really beneficial if you and I had an offline conversation.
Okay, well, that's fine. I'm just reflecting back what Graham...
Yeah, because there will actually be a different view from Graham's view.
All right, well, I'm happy to do that. I'm just reflecting back that I had a conversation with the sports park itself and the trust.
No, you've had a conversation with the Community Fitness Centre Trust.
Yes, I have.
And I understand we need to clarify the difference between their part and the rest of the park, which is the Regional Sports Park Trust, which is the trust that I chair.
All right,
so it is confusing, but Graham has one small but very important part of that land.
All right. Thank you for that, Councillor. I'm happy to have that discussion with you. I had almost completed reflecting back the conversation that I'd had with Graham, and I did want to do that. I'm sure those two things can work in alignment. Back to any other...
Councillor Price.
Councillor Price.
Obviously, with that discussion, maybe PGA would come into that loop a little bit when it's being built, because it's going to have a lot of people going to and from as well.
It's the same issue, and yeah, I understand. Please keep raising this, because we need to look at new and tailored ways of doing things. And I agree that on-demand does create those types of opportunities that need to be explored. All right, any other questions on that paper? Okay, now, would someone like to move the recommendation in it? I will. A seconder?
Yeah, I can full second it.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. You are very kind. All in favour, please put your thumbs up. Anyone against? Carried unanimous. Transport Manager's report, please. Marianne, you're going to speak to that.
Yes, and another report just for your information, and a reasonably high-level look at what is happening around transport across New Zealand particularly, but I guess pointing out opportunities for enabling change as we work towards quite lofty objectives, both at a national as well as a regional level, for managing transport emissions. A lot of what we're doing all seems to coalesce around those climate change challenges that we have. So happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
All right, we'll be hearing from Linda later about the NLTP funding alongside our priority funding requests in the transport plan. I just had a question on rail, and Linda may be able to help with this. There's been a lot of energy and activity and enthusiasm in building on the Wairoa to Napier link with a Gisborne to Wairoa link. We seem to fall into this kind of funding black hole where you've got a road, national land transport for road, and you've got a rail strategy and a Land Transport Management Act, but they don't connect. There isn't a bridge. So does the fact that Waka Kotahi say it's not in the NLTP mean that that's game over as far as we're concerned? And if so, why? Is my question. I mean, Linda may be able to assist with that as much as anyone else.
I can respond that no, it doesn't rule it out. You can keep it within the list for sure.
Yeah, it's still on our plan, yeah. So, but we just probably need to knock on a different door. Ministry of Transport, for example.
It's something I'd recommend that we sit down and have a look at in a bit closer detail. We've obviously got an increased role when it comes to the Rail Network Improvement Programme. That's an aside, but I think if it's featuring higher in the RTC's priority list, then perhaps we have a separate, more detailed discussion about how we could look to approach raising it across everybody else's priority list as well, Chair.
Thank you, Linda. I've got a suggestion for, it need not necessarily be a workshop, but perhaps a paper to be brought to the, whatever month this is, December committee meeting, staff in consultation with you, Linda, just to paint that picture for us. Where do you go for funding that sort of program? How does it fit within the NLTP, RLTP, Land Transport Management Act arrangement? So that we just really understand the context within which people wanting to drive that alternative. And the government policy statement is all about alternatives to private cars and getting freight going. So, yeah, if we could perhaps make that a topic for future discussion and consideration at the next meeting or the meeting after that, because I don't want to drop the ball on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It really is just explaining to us the current setup. And you know where the opportunities and where the gaps are potentially. So I mean, we may need as a region to lobby central government to fix them if that is the situation.
Officers can pull that paper together properly.
Thank you. Yep. I don't want to be unduly onerous in that request, but I think it's important, particularly given the climate change imperatives, etc. All right. Any other questions any questions on this paper from other members? All right, I don't see anyone with their hand up. So could someone please move the recommendation? Thank you, Mayor Sandra. Seconder? Oh, okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. All in favour, thumbs up or say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried, unanimous. All right, so Linda, it's over to you.
Hello everyone, thank you very much, Chair. I'll just see how the pod is working and go for a bit of a screen share. Is that going to work? Hopefully everybody is seeing the opening slide. Yeah. Oh, thank you. And it's, from my perspective, really disappointing not to be physically with you all, but hey, virtually is better than not at all. So looking forward to seeing you all in the future. So for this presentation, it's in addition to the detailed pack or the detailed slides that are included in your agenda. We're just looking at how we evolve and how we engage with the RTC to ensure that the information that we provide is really well aligned to our RLTP. But we're also cognizant too that you still want to keep abreast of the projects and activities that we have running right across Hawke's Bay. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide some national context to Waka Kotahi's work and how that relates to Hawke's Bay. We'll then move through some particular items of interest. So for example, in this section, it will be the NLTP, and then giving an overview and update of the work that is happening within the current financial year in the region. Just really keen to make sure that we leverage the collective experience and expertise around the table to ensure that we're measuring and monitoring how we're tracking collectively against the RLTP, and shifting away from perhaps spending a lot of time anyway in some of the detail. So I'm happy to take questions at the end of the presentation, but equally on the detailed information that you have, and I'll take that as read. So first of all, just an update on Road to Zero. Like our discussion earlier, the important part is, as well as having the strategy and the plan and the programme in place, is measuring the results that are being achieved. And for us to actually really seriously understand how we are tracking against that reduction in deaths and serious injuries right across our network, it is very important that we monitor and also clearly report back to Aotearoa on that progress. So the first of 10 annual reports has just been released on our strategy, and it does include some clarity on how we are measuring progress, which may be beneficial for that earlier discussion, how we have progressed in 2020 against the targets, how we're tracking overall to the 2030 target, which is ambitious and rightly so, as well as information about specific safety outcomes and indicators. The annual monitoring report is available on the Ministry of Transport website, but if anybody is interested in receiving a copy directly to them, we can certainly make that available for you. We know that infrastructure, speed, enforcement all provides an important part to the overall safer systems approach. But we do have to consider driver behaviour, driver awareness and driver education as part of that safer system approach. So we will be launching a significant public awareness campaign on Road to Zero. We know through a public attitudes road survey conducted in 2020 that many New Zealanders currently accept that people will die or be seriously injured as a result of using roads. And we want to challenge that belief, let's say, through this campaign, and that will be promoting Vision Zero. It will also be raising awareness of the Road to Zero strategy and outlining our plan that we are collectively taking towards reducing deaths and serious injuries on our roads. And it will be a little bit different to how we've approached it before. So we'll keep you informed on that. It was due to launch, I think, later this year, but because of COVID lockdowns and timings, we've actually made the decision to hold it off until we're out of that Christmas period, and we'll launch it in earnest in January. So we'll keep you apprised of that. Another important one for all of us is how we deliver broader outcomes for our communities through our investment in the land transport sector. Working with a diverse group of suppliers is an important part of our broader outcomes vision, and also aligns with Te Ara Kotahi, which is our Māori strategy. We've selected to partner with Amatai, so that is the central government selected partner, but it's also open to commercial organisations as well as local government. And Amatai provides access to over 650 Māori and Pacifica owned businesses that focus specifically on construction and infrastructure. So it's helping to open our doors to businesses and organisations that we may not have previously been aware of or known how to tap into. Amatai, interestingly, too, also provides bespoke guides for engagement, great tools and resources that organisations can use to increase their own capability, as well as one-on-one advice for particular programmes of work or projects, and does provide ongoing support on how to develop your own supplier diversity programmes internally. Again, if anybody is particularly interested, and this is an area that I know we're all exploring, we can provide you or connect you with further information on Amatai or what we are doing. And then the last update on our national activities to keep you up to speed, and we've touched on this a little bit in our conversation so far, is the emphasis on climate change and decarbonisation right across the land transport network. And an important part of that is Te Haringa o Te Taio, which is our resource efficiency strategy. We're moving and we want to take a whole of life approach to our infrastructure projects, factoring in the environment to all of our decision making so that we genuinely achieve the best outcomes for our communities, our people, our places, and importantly, overall our planet. We all know that our transport system is heavily resource dependent. So Te Haringa o Te Taio is a way to support us to deliver on our commitment to resource sustainability and minimising our environmental impact. To be really clear, when we're talking about resource efficiency, we're talking about energy consumption and waste, and also the use of virgin and recycled materials in all of our programmes and projects. And this strategy particularly will help us to reduce the environmental impact of our work, as well as the operational carbon emissions through our projects, but also our maintenance programmes. Again, if this is something that you are working through within your organisations, we're happy to provide you with some further information on what it is specifically that we are doing. So bringing it back a little bit closer to home, I just wanted to give you all an update on let's say an evolution in how Waka Kotahi operates within regions right across Aotearoa and specifically within the Central region and Hawke's Bay. Some of you may already be aware of, let's say, the move or the creation of a regional leadership team. And I just wanted to provide you all with a little bit of more information as to what that actually means for all of you and the RTC and how you can connect with us in region. We're placing as an organisation a much stronger emphasis on the importance of our relationships, but partnership with local government and with key stakeholders right across the region. And the regional model and the regional leadership team is one of our primary mechanisms to do that. We are here as a team to ensure that we and Waka Kotahi understand the regional priorities, so what matters most on the ground to you. As well, the regional variations, and that could be between Hawke's Bay and Tairāwhiti, or it could be between the Central region and, say, Southland. So making it quite clear about both the opportunities and the challenges as they relate to the Central region. The other thing here is that we are an active part of your region. So the leadership team predominantly live and work in the region that we're responsible for. So we're as focused on achieving great outcomes for the communities as each of you are. And I think some of the tangible benefits that as a team we are keen to ensure that we deliver for you is to increase our visibility and availability to each of you and your councils. Also as well ensuring that you know who to speak to for any given issue or question that you might have. And for us as a team, we want to ensure that we have a really, really strong regional voice back into our business. So this is one of the primary areas of focus for us as a team. So who's in the team? Important to know. There'll be a couple of familiar faces on here, but I wanted to highlight the top left individual. Our regional team has our executive leadership team sponsor, and that is Matthew Walker. And the important part of this is it's a direct line for us collectively back into our executive team. It's also here to support us as a regional leadership team in our thinking and approach, as well as to support issue resolution or barriers that we might be encountering. importantly for all of us is that it will increase the level of understanding of our executive team of what is happening within the central region. So it's a really important operational link for all of us. On here, it highlights, and then back to the previous slide that I just jumped over, our regional managers. And they're really key leadership roles for you and for your council officers. They manage now end-to-end of our transport system. So you have Sarah, who's joined on the call. She's regional manager for system design. Then we also have Lonnie Dalzell, who's unfortunately not able to join us today. Lonnie is responsible for infrastructure delivery, so for the big projects right across the region. And then Jack Hankin, who's also on the call, I believe, today, is regional manager for maintenance and operations. So that provides us with a really cohesive view end to end of what is happening right across the network. And we aim to ensure that your council teams have a very close relationship with our regional managers. We also have Jeanette there. Jeanette is, some of you will know, Margot Borden, based in Napier. Jeanette oversees all of our engagement and communication, and Margot reports through to Jeanette. And that's really ensuring how we engage with your communities are as effective as possible. And then just thinking about some of the earlier conversations around the regulatory environment, it's a huge part of our business, and sometimes it's kind of set to the side in many of the conversations, whereas we know, particularly in a region like Hawke's Bay, the areas such as the growth in freight, the commercial sector, driver licensing, testing and safety are hugely important, and that's very much managed within our reg team. And so Katie is our member in our RLT and can help us just navigate some of the complexities that exist within the regulatory environment. So that's a little overview of the RLT, and for those that you haven't met, I'm sure you will meet in due course, myself included in that, for those I haven't had a chance to catch up with. So now on to the topic of the moment. We will get there, I promise. The National Land Transport Programme was launched the 7th of September after a little bit of a delay to adopting that and getting it launched by the Minister, our board chair and CEO. Just to reiterate and double down, this investment supports and is focused on sustainable growth of our land transport system, especially with that transition to a low carbon future for transport. And we see that indicated by the funding priorities that have come through both the GPS, but also in the NLTP for 21 to 24, that there's more of an increase in spending and emphasis on public transport, walking and cycling, and less perhaps on new roading development projects. One thing that we're all acutely aware of is that the funding environment has been very constrained. And if we were having this conversation and we had launched the NLTP a month ago, the conversation and the feel in the room, let's say, would have been very, very difficult. We have been operating in a hugely constrained funding situation, and I would acknowledge all of those that have worked hard as councils and through LGNZ as well to really ensure that the messages and the impact of that constrained funding environment are well heard and well understood by not just Waka Kotahi, but by the Ministry of Transport and the Minister as well. We've been pleased to be able to secure an additional $2 billion. That's through debt servicing from the Minister. He announced that on the 7th of September. And what was really pleasing within that is there has been a commitment to undertake a review within the next 12 months of our funding model to ensure that it is a sustainable and viable funding model into what is quite a new future for the transport system across Aotearoa. So specifically, some investment highlights for Hawke's Bay. We know, you know better than us, that this region relies on the state highway and rail networks to move all of the goods to market, to get them from the port and out across the country and vice versa, as well as beautiful fresh produce right across the country. The land transport network also provides critical connections for your communities, but as well tourism too. We know that your local communities rely on these connections to access employment, healthcare, education, and other specialist services that are located within Napier and Hastings. Highlights down the side, I won't go through each of them individually, but you will see that there is really solid investment in public transport, walking and cycling, as well as an increasing investment in road safety through the Road to Zero programme. We're also committing to spend and invest $214 million on the maintenance of state highways and local roads right across Hawke's Bay. So one of the key things to just clarify is what is funded and what it has not been funded in the significant activities and the prioritised programme of work in the RLTP. So thank you to Martin, to the chair, for prompting that. And this we thought would be the best way to just demonstrate against that significant activities programme that's in the RLTP for which have been funded and which have not been funded. One thing that I would say is that while it's always disappointing that we can't fund everything, I would note again that if this conversation had been a month ago, there would have been a lot less that we were able to fund. So just encourage a degree of pragmatism around what has made it through into the funding round for 21 to 24. One of the common questions that is asked, and just to clarify, we have a few on the list there that are possible as well as the probable funded. The possibles have been included as they are noted through our prioritisation framework as high priority activities, but they are not expected to be funded unless additional funding is secured. So we need to make sure that we monitor through the life of the RLTP, as we do every RLTP term, any changes to the funding pool that comes available through those activity classes, and if we can secure funding for those projects. So that is recognition that they are still high priority, but there's potentially further work for us to do to make sure that funding is certain for those projects. What we wanted to just cover here is to provide you with an overview of what you can expect to see happening across the network when it comes to maintenance and operations. So this is particularly focused on your state highway maintenance. We're aiming here as an RLT to give you more visibility. We know that it's you that your community comes to ask for what is happening when, and we want to be better able to provide you with that information on a real-time basis. So we're pleased to advise here that we have over the next 3 years just over 42 million allocated and confirmed for maintenance and operations activity across Hawke's Bay. We're still currently just working through as a team how we deliver this over the life of the 3 years of the NLTP. So there may be a few shifts to what you see there, but the total funding is confirmed. It's just more a case of what happens when over that 3-year period. Almost 14 million of the funding will be spent on renewing surfaces and the pavements on the regional highways, and just under 28.5 million will be spent on routine maintenance. Routine maintenance includes work such as reactive surfacing and repair work, pavement work, barrier guardrails, structures such as retaining walls, bridges, those types of works. And while the map will look extraordinarily tiny in this format, so apologies, wanted to visually give you an idea of the extent of work that is happening over this period, so that you can see it if you like. So the map on the left is for this coming financial year, and then the map on the right shows the extent of the activity over the next 3 years. So just looking at that one on the right, to put it into context, you've got just over 6 kilometres of rehab work happening, over 123 kilometres of resales happening across the network, as well as just under 1.5 kilometre of the thin asphaltic concrete in place as well. So I think you can see here that we are recognising that there is work to do to continue to provide those maintenance levels of service right across our state highway network. Speed and infrastructure programmes for the coming 3 years. We're all well aware of speed reviews already underway and nearing completion on State Highway 51 and State Highway 5. Are in progress now and are on track to be completed and implemented as per the timeframes shown there on that top table. Just the bottom part is the planned safety infrastructure projects as well. So that's just to give you an idea of the work that is coming up over the next 3 years. One thing that I would say here is that both of the are subject to feasibility work that's underway. So we can see there on the State Highway 5 for Hawke's Bay through to the regional boundary and State Highway 2. We've currently got our feasibility work happening. And what that will help us to really understand is what are the most appropriate treatment, when is most appropriate to carry those out, and how we might approach them. So that level of funding and also the timing of that is indicative, shown on that table. We have to work through the details of what the safety improvements and infrastructure improvements will look like on that section of the corridor. But in terms of the general scope, they are safe corridor treatments. So you can expect to see things included in that feasibility work, such as wide centre lines, some widening of the roads, side hazard treatments, including barriers, and even looking at things like median barriers as well. But a lot of that detail is still to come through in the feasibility work. And we're aiming to have that completed early next year and the feasibility completed by March, April of 2020. So we can give you a prize in that work. And then lastly, and it speaks a little bit to where I started in opening the presentation, as a leadership team, we're acutely aware that all of us as partners have a number of strategies and plans. All of them have an impact on or are connected to the land transport system. And they might start off with different purposes, but fundamentally we're looking at how we support great health, well-being, social and economic prosperity for our communities. Our current way of working as an organisation and through the RTC tends to be quite short-term in its focus, so it's bound by that RLTP planning on a 3-year horizon, whereas we know you as our local government partners tend to plan 10 to 30 years in advance. So we're very, very keen to have a look at how we can partner through the RTC to have greater long-term strategic planning on the land transport network across the Hawke's Bay. Importantly within this for us is that we know that there's going to be continuing complexities and changes in our operating environment. Regardless of the government of the time, we know that there'll be continuing challenges around prioritisation of road improvements, significant capital works through to walking and cycling, decarbonisation and resilience work. We also know too, globally we're seeing it, and we're seeing it in Aotearoa, that there's a greater and greater shift coming onto our metro areas. What we need to ensure, and what we think the benefit of taking a longer term view alongside you is to create a more compelling value proposition and funding proposition for central government that we can adapt and not necessarily respond to, but proactively connect with the different priorities that we know will come through from central government in the coming years. We also believe that in provincial New Zealand and in regional New Zealand, scale is of the essence. So how can we collectively link in with Tairāwhiti and also Manawatu, Wanganui and Taranaki to showcase the scale and also as well the contribution in terms of economic activity that the central region makes to Aotearoa and ensure that's well understood through investment and decision making. So this is something that we're keen to keep on the table with you all as we move through this programme of work and into future planning, and also to work with your council officers as well into the future. And that's all from me, and really happy to take any questions on the presentation or on the detailed information.
Linda, thank you for that most informative and thorough presentation, for taking us right from the bigger picture down through to the issues of concern to this region. I'll open up the questions in a moment. I just want to firstly apologise. I didn't really formally introduce you to the members of the committee, and you will have that opportunity, as you mentioned, to meet us all in person. I, of course, have met you, and I know that you would have met a number of the other members of the committee individually. So apologies for not ensuring you were properly introduced and acknowledged before you launched into that. So I just have one question, and it's heartening to see the $30 million on State Highway 5 for safety improvements, but I was a bit disappointed not to see in the approved NLTP our multimodal business case for the expressway, given that it is exactly that, multimodal, and I would have thought ticked every GPS box in terms of climate change, improved freight connections, and realistic transport options. So why did it fail? What did we do wrong there? Not putting you on the spot or anything, but just.
It's perhaps something that we could go into a little bit more detail with the team and council officers to just unpack that a little bit more, Chair. But essentially, when it has gone through the investment prioritisation framework, it has come out at a low level in terms of the prioritisation versus other walking and cycling activities that have been put forward from the region, but also nationally. So yeah, that's probably the essence of the decision making. One thing that I would say is the walking and cycling activity class, while it has been bolstered and we've seen a significant level of funding, it has been hugely oversubscribed. And it also has been taken up by a number of very significant and large projects elsewhere across the country. So perhaps in this constrained funding environment, albeit we did manage to attract an additional $2 billion, it is still a very tight cloth for us to cut. And this is one of the projects that unfortunately didn't make it high enough up the prioritisation to get through this time.
Well, thank you. I think it'll be very important that we do have a clear understanding of where it went wrong so that we can address that, because I don't think we can give up on it. I'd be a shame if we lost it because of the bridge in Auckland, but anyway, I'm sure that's not what you meant. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got my hand up there.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Hold it up.
Mayor Little from Wairoa.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Linda, thanks for your presentation. Really good to see that the Mahia blowhole is a probable and the work's out there, because of Rocket Lab being a business of national significance, but really disappointed that State Highway 38 has gone down to a possible after all the work we've done. We've had PGF funding that went, but had a promise from NZTA that they would take over the funding and it would get done. We've done so much work, and you know the book I gave you, the book was about 2 inches thick of the work that we have done on that road, the work that this Transport Committee has done, and to be back down to possible is just a shock to me. We've just had a report come out, a business case from you guys has come back. We've had Stuart Nash, talking to you guys, just saying to Emma Spacnet, this road just has to be done. So I'm not quite sure how we've ended up at possible again.
It's a fair and good and valid question to raise. It is possible, so it's not that it's not funded. And I would note, and Simon, who I know you've been working closely with and has been involved in this project for some time, we are still continuing to progress this internally. It is, as you know, you're much more aware than I am, Mayor Little. It is a complicated and complex process, but we have provided the executive summary, which I know the stakeholders have fed into. That is then going to be presented, and thank you for those that did contribute to that, into our internal delegations committee, and it will be going to our board. So I just want to reassure you that while it's in there as a possible, that doesn't at all mean that the work has stopped for us internally. We recognise the significance and the importance of it, but it is complex for us to move this through. And by complex, I mean that the project itself and what's required takes a slightly different form to perhaps what I would say, if I can, a more standard investment prioritisation process. And we just have to work through that alongside our partners to ensure that that's well understood. So, Mayor Little, I do understand your disappointment that it's possible, but it is still possible, and we're still committed to working with you on that.
Thanks for that. Just through you again, Martin. I think this road would probably have set a lot of records for business cases, records for promises, records for money coming, records for money going. I'm actually over it. Like my predecessor, he was in for 12 years. He lobbied for it for years, and he was just so disappointed. That was one of his biggest goals, to get it done. I've now been here for 8 years, and it should be so simple. And we're just overcomplicating it. We have one iwi that is having a lot more say than any other stakeholder in the road. So I really want something from this council, this transport committee, that really focuses on this road. We're just overcomplicating it.
All right, well, I don't know what more Linda can share, unless you want to, Linda. I'm just wanting to come back to me a little bit.
I just acknowledging the concerns and reiterating it is complex, but it is still a work in progress for us. It's by no means stopped at all. And I think, the team that are on the call with me could, say testimony to that.
I'm going to come back to that in a minute, Mayor Little, about what this committee might do about it. Mayor Hazelhurst.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor Little, and I acknowledge that, Linda, it is difficult from your world. There's a bigger picture here, and we're all over it. We've done PGF, we've done everything else for Craig to get this road. What we've got now in the next 2 or 3 years is significant growth in tourism for Hawke's Bay. Because we haven't got our international visitors coming, we've got every other person coming to Hawke's Bay for tramping, holidays and beach and all the fabulous things we offer. Now, I think that we should write as regional leaders to Sir Brian Roach and get them going. We just have to move on now and say, what is the hold up? And yes, this committee can support, but it needs to have a letter to the chairman, because this can't go on like this. This is a beautiful jewel in our crown, and we have to be able to get people safely to access it.
Look, I'm very happy to support that and put my name to the letter to the extent that it would help. Perhaps if Mayors Sandra and Craig, we three and everyone else who wishes to be involved could take this offline and
Yes.
work out that communication. Because I think, we're sort of shooting the messenger here with Linda. She's new to the scene, and she's faithfully reported the outcomes as best she can, but I'm happy to support. So.
No, totally get that Linda's got a job there to do. And Linda, you have, you're the first one that's taken the novel away to have a good look at it. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question through you, Chair.
No problem.
To Linda, just wanted to catch up on State Highway 5. And when will the announcement be made both on the speed limit, do we know? And when will the confirmation of funding be made?
So firstly, on the speed limit, the sentiment report is just being completed currently, and the timeline that we had previously shared, we're still committed to, we're still on track with that. So the announcement will go and the advice to ministers will go in November and also to councils, and we're looking to have it implemented and in the ground if there is changes by the end of this year, so this calendar year.
And so that's the announcement on the speed limit
on State Highway 5, yes.
And what about the the investment to be confirmed
for the infrastructure improvements?
Yes. So far we've got the maintenance investment of 12 million. We've got the safety system improvements 2.5. But anything else in terms of realignment or anything hasn't been confirmed.
No.
And when do we hear about that?
So the majority of that, sorry, I've taken my slides off, but the reference that I had made on the slide to the infrastructure improvements, so that's the 29.5 million, that's the work that's going through on the feasibility currently, aiming to have that completed early next year and the feasibility report finished and completed by March, April of 2022, of which then that will guide us on what the infrastructure improvements actually are. So that's probably the first stage gate. So once we get that feasibility completed, we'll be able to report back and advise what's come out of that and what those improvements look like.
So just a comment, Linda, and through you, Chair, it would have been far more helpful to have the State Highway 5 road improvements allocated and knowing what they are, that business case completed before we looked at the speed. But anyway, that's how your people above you roll, and but I just couldn't help but say that. Kia ora.
Acknowledging that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, any other comments or feedback, questions for Linda before we move around the room, the screen? Okay, thank you very much. Do we need to move that report be received? How do we do this?
Yes, just need to receive and note it.
I so move that we receive the report with thanks from Linda. Seconder, please.
Martin, can I just jump in there? Can you add something about the letter?
Yes, you can record in the minutes that that we will be, as a committee, writing directly to the chair of the agency. So. And so we have a seconder. Yep. All in favour?
Aye.
And right. Anyone against? No. Okay. So look, it's a bit difficult for me to know who's here. I can see Ian there, I think. But could we go around the room, perhaps starting with you, Ian, in terms of the advisory representatives? I don't think we've got Matt or anyone, but who wish to share any update with us?
Thanks, Martin. No, I haven't got too much of an update. Just like to acknowledge that probably this week the industry's received ability to use saliva testing and there's been kits made available. So that's aiding those of us that are crossing the level 4 line into Auckland. It was quite difficult in the first part, and we can understand that. We don't want any transfer, but it was quite an issue having to have our people tested at the various testing sites and acknowledged and carry paperwork that was unavailable. But it's since rectified itself as the week's gone on. So I think that's aided at no end. Apart from that, I'd just like to make a little bit of a comment on the stats and the serious injuries and deaths over the last 12 months. It's gratifying to see the reduction, but I think we've got to be a little bit conscious that it also might be a bit reflective in the numbers of vehicles on road through the lockdown periods. It's quite a marked difference and a lot less congestion. Not that I'd like to say that be negative about it, but I think we've got to be conscious that if we went through 12 months without it, it could have a reflection upward again. So, thanks, Martin.
Thank you very much. Jareth, do you want to talk about cycling?
As you know, I always want to talk about cycling, and it's great to see. Thank you very much for your report as well, Linda, and that you have got a high priority for reused material. And I've got an idea. There's a whole lot of parking spaces that we actually can recycle into cycleways and walking ways, you know. And you only have to look at Seville in Spain, where they actually, at almost zero cost, have changed the whole roading infrastructure by not adding any more tarmac or bitumen or concrete, and have made these beautiful cycle lanes right through the whole city. They just reused the ones that are already there, which was roading and parking. Anyway, Martin, we're, as the Hawke's Bay Cycle Governance Group, we, instead of actually just holding our next meeting, we're actually going to hold a workshop. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how we actually can add to this particular committee as well. Instead of just reporting back, we actually want to start making a difference in how we advise and guide people in Hawke's Bay around cycling. And this is not just the beautiful highways that we've got. And Sandra, you forgot to mention that we actually got 211 beautiful highways, you know, on the stop banks, and a lot of outside people from outside New Zealand come to Hawke's Bay to actually cycle. You only have to come Easter or Labour weekend at the end of the public holiday. How many cars leave Hawke's Bay with cycles on the back? It's just amazing. So, you know, Vicky Butterworth and HBRC have done a fantastic job in that particular area. But it's the cycle for purpose that we really need to change, and it's about safety. And whenever you'll hear me talk about it, I won't take any of my grandchildren across Napier or Hastings on a cycle, on a bike. It is just too dangerous, and we need to change that. So hopefully, as a Hawke's Bay Cycle Governance Group, we will start to give some more advice as what we think would need to happen for Hawke's Bay. So we will hopefully invite, we're definitely going to invite you, Martin, to that workshop. And Linda, may be good if maybe you could attend as well. So we'll send you an invite as well. Thank you very much, Martin, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jareth, and I have got an invitation to meet with Vicky and Russell to talk about the interface between the cycling group and this committee to ensure that relationship is as productive as it can be.
Great,
okay,
thank you.
I think we're Andrew there.
Kia ora. Thanks for the opportunity. Always appreciate, from the port's perspective, being able to listen in on the activities and all the actions and progress being made in our region. Thank you very much for the Transport Manager's report. Thank you, Linda, for the NZTA Wakakatahi report. Much appreciated. The port itself is business as usual. Certainly during COVID, we faced some challenges in relation to needing to change some of our processes, which, as per the last lockdown 18 months ago, reduced our capacity somewhat, with the need to, you know, wipe down machines and sanitize in between shifts and so on. So basically, we could do a bit less during lockdown, but quickly out of that. And I suppose in a way we were lucky to not be in the middle of our peak container season. During lockdown, we were coming off our peak, and so the region's cargo flows were not disrupted too much, and the port remains healthy and on track. Of note, since I believe I was able to attend the last meeting I attended, the port has put the Whakatu Inland Freight Hub project on back burners, sort of probably a little bit harsh, but that's the appropriate term to use. Just while the business case, a sustainable business case builds for that project to proceed. So that's just probably, if the committee wasn't aware of that, that's something worth noting. So until we do develop Whakatu Freight Hub, the main items for the port to consider in the region, in terms of the region's transport, are just freight access. Access to and from the port, the main, be they via road or rail. Notably, the Wairua rail service will go from being a weekend-only service, 2 trains per weekend, to Monday to Friday. So that's kicking off from early November. So that's exciting and encouraging to see that project that took many years to get up and running and finally got up and running, and through all of those challenges, and now we'll be expanding and taking more trucks off the road from between Wairua and Napier. So that's it's a real positive movement, and well done to Kiwi Rail for making some progress there. There was one item that's possibly more relevant for Napier, but certainly the region. We've been working of late with Derek McDermott, a project manager with NZTA, Waka Kotahi, and that's in relation to a project to provide a cycleway or a shared pathway along Hyderabad Road to provide cycling connectivity for Napier Hill to the Prebenson Road cycleway, which I believe is an acknowledged gap or disconnection between the cycleways through Napier. We quite admittedly dropped the ball here. We've only, towards the end of the process, or the project is effectively at the tendering stage. We've just realised the impact and the conflicts that this project is going to create with freight traffic. In particular, the proposed new crossing across Hyderabad Road for users of the future cycleway, Hyderabad Road between Pandora Road and Prebenson Drive, will certainly impact freight traffic, trucks travelling to and from the port, and also fundamentally bringing cyclists and other users of that shared pathway into conflict with freight traffic. Managing conflicts is one of the toughest things that we all have to do in transport, and certainly acknowledge that the cycling and encouraging more cycling and providing infrastructure for cycling is absolutely the way forward. But we have sort of very late in the piece realised the impact this is going to have on freight traffic, perhaps potentially creating queuing. And I just wanted to note, really not necessarily asking for any discussion or feedback or comments, but Linda, I was given your contact details by Robin Malley, and I'll be in touch if that's okay, and just to chat about what alternatives there might be or not, as the case may be, and just to possibly try and highlight some of the impact that might have on regional freight flows, and possibly relevant for you, Lofty, just to Ian Emerson, just to be aware of those as well, and if you weren't. But that was all. Port's in good shape. The region's in good shape in terms of cargo flows, and apart from the project that I just mentioned posing a possible concern, the other major thing is just managing log truck congestion. The only other thing I wanted to mention in that area is that we are more and more looking at opportunities to encourage staging of log trucks so they don't all turn up at once. So we've asked the industry to look at this for us several months ago, and really the industry hasn't been able to sort of come up with a solution. That's the log export industry. So there are some good behaviours from people like Panpac, who are spreading their trucking activities over a longer period of time during the day. This has an impact on, but truck congestion nevertheless has 2 big peaks, first thing and then sort of around midday. And it has a significant impact on safety and turnaround time on port. And also the more obvious one to all of you is queuing that we can see in and around the city. So we believe there is an opportunity to spread the flow of trucks, encourage more staging, and so we're looking at how we might address that congestion with some form of congestion management system. We're very wary that we won't probably won't go down the road of a vehicle booking system that we did with container trucks many years ago, particularly given that when it comes to logs, we don't actually directly control any aspects of that supply chain. With containers, it was easy because we run the container terminal, easier. So just flagging those are a couple of issues that are on our plate in relation to transport. And thanks again for the opportunity to update the committee. If there are questions, happy to take them now or privately, offline.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive and helpful, I think. So, are there any questions for Andrew? I was certainly interested to hear your comment about the Napier Wairoa rail line, so it's positive. And understand your issues with the cycle initiative, cycling initiative. So, okay, do we have any other advisory members who wish to address the committee this morning? All right, doesn't sound like it. Do we need to move that those reports be received?
Yes, it'd be helpful.
Okay, I'll do that. Would someone like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Price. All in favour of receiving the reports that we have from our advisory members, say aye. Anyone against, say no. That's carried. There are no minor items on the agenda. I just wanted to mention that it would be very helpful, please, if we could have uploaded to Stella within the Transport Committee folder the following documents. Firstly, our approved Regional Land Transport Plan. Secondly, the Government Policy Statement. Thirdly, the National Land Transport Plan. And fourthly, the Government's Rail Policy Statement. Just so that we've got those documents, I think it's really important to have them at our fingertips, literally at the tap of the screen. So thank you. Charlie, would you like to close with a karakia? Or would you like
Martin, could I just ask a question, please?
I don't see why not.
I'm just, do we have a Kiwi Rail representative on this committee, and are they going to attend the meetings? Because there's probably a few things that would be quite good to have them here for.
Yes, it's the question I've asked. We do actually have a name tag sitting there ready to go for said representative who, since I've been on this committee, which isn't that long, I don't think has put in an appearance. Perhaps we need to follow up at officer level to encourage that. Because I sense, that's a good point. I mean, I just really sense the dialogue, hearing from Andrew, hearing from Ian. This is a really good way for messages to get across, for Linda to understand what's, concerning and interesting the region, for example. So, yeah, good question.
So, I mean, a highlight for me would be the Ellison Road crossing, in light of events that have taken place there, and it would be quite good to have them here to comment on it. I see there's some announcements going to be made on speed for that area, but it would be good to have them here.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you for raising that. Perhaps if we could just follow, just to repeat the request. Now, closing karakia. Charlie, do you want me to do it, or you have to do it?
Yeah, you.
All right. We have, I don't know if you've got the Te Kupinga app available to you, but we're going to do kia tau. So I'll, as Pieri always says, set the pace, you set the volume, although you'll be doing it with your mute on by yourself at full window shattering levels of noise. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki, a ihu karati me te araha o te atoa, me te whiwhi nā tahitanga ki te wairua tāpū, aki, amenei.
Kia ora, Martin.
Meeting closed. Thank you all for your attendance today, and kia pai tō rā.
Kia ora.